All right.
And hopefully, well, at least it says we're live, so that's good.
We're going with it.
Should I check Facebook to see if we're in Facebook?
Yes, that would be lovely.
Yes.
Yeah, because then you can also see the comments, because,
I haven't agreed to join that doodah thing.
oh, yeah, you don't need to do that, so. And I can check it as well.
There we
So,
are.
so we're still,
Oh,
you
we
know,
are there.
we're still
Hello
learning,
to myself.
we're still learning our technology, so we appreciate everybody's patience while we get that. We did decide to go live at 8 because we have class this morning, and we're still at Jean's, we're at the hotel for Jean Lee's Bristol 3 weekend, at Attic New York, so. And we're having a fabulous time.
Oh,
with it.
God.
Oh, my
Like,
gosh.
if you get a
It's been
chance to
amazing.
come to a Bristol weekend, definitely come.
Well, we've already said to Jean, we plan to come again next year.
Yeah, we're hoping that there will be a Bristol 4. So.
Yes. Yeah,
That
it
will
is,
be-
it is, well, and Jean will tell you that it is her favorite event of the year. Because the stories behind Bristol samplers are so special.
And we've had some wonderful, wonderful talks.
We have.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
But now we get to talk about something else that's super exciting, and that's our beautiful Sarah. And
She
we
got
have her.
here.
Yay!
So Sarah and her adventure with
Hannah,
Hannah in
yeah.
Dallas, which she still hasn't spilled the beans about. She's pretty mum about that. It's just so lovely to actually get a chance to see her in person again. And part of what we were going to do today was talk about the model, but also we brought the fabrics just to kind of see what the difference is, because dilats change over time, and this was stitched quite some time ago.
It was stitched in 2020
Yeah.
or 2019.
That is
I think
just crazy.
2020. Yeah, I think I sent it off in 2019, but yeah,
A long time ago.
a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
different world then.
So tell us about how you said that you had acquired the sampler and that you gave it to Sandra,
Yes.
and that it's kind of like Weetabix and
Yeah.
and
Well,
the
I saw
fabric's
this
kind of
sampler
disintegrating.
I saw this sampler come up for sale at auction, and I just loved it because it was different.
Right.
I showed it to Sandra, and I think her jaw hit the floor and her heart beat faster. And this was for her. We knew that Leona would love this sample. We showed it to Leona, and yes, she had the same reaction as us.
Yep.
So we were lucky enough to buy it at auction. It came through a shipping company to me. I didn't open the box. I just sent it on to Australia so that Sandra could have the thrill of being the first person to see it.
What a
And-
treat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's all.
You have special moments. It's like giving birth the first time you look at
Yeah.
your baby. When you stitch a model and you start with a
Yes.
blank piece of canvas and you start putting
Yep.
stitches in, it's that thrill of seeing something
It
for
is.
the first time.
Yeah, and seeing it come to life.
Absolutely. So it's with Sarah, it's been a long process because there were lots of delays along the way due to COVID. And then, she was even delayed right from here. She has made it easy for us.
Perennially late.
When I got to the airport, I rushed up to the baggage claim and I said, "Oh, you've got my van." She said, "What does it look like?" And I said, "It's a very large red suitcase."
Exactly.
She said, "Does it have fragile on it?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I was wondering what was inside it, that it was fragile." I said, "Hannah and Sarah inside." And she looked at me as if I had people in
My
it.
adopted children.
So I had to explain.
Oh my gosh.
That's funny.
But I
I'm
do,
sure that did freak her out a bit. Yeah.
but I do think of it as
Yes.
girls, little girls. And the samplers that I reproduce and stitch, they are my babies, they're my children.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and you get to know them so well after you
absolutely.
spent the time either stitching them or charting them or both or any of that
Yeah.
combination.
Yeah.
Well, I had the same excitement when you both showed her to me in January and asked me to run this stitch along. I was like, oh my gosh, she's gorgeous. Yeah.
Well, and she is just such a different
Yeah.
style of sampler.
And at the symposium in January, where we had the model, when needleworkers were attending, were coming up and looking at her, it was, oh my God. For some reason, we can't capture the true beauty of this sampler through the lens of the camera. This is a sampler you really need to see how beautiful it is.
Yes.
Well, I had Sarah laying on the table last night for our show on Saturday nights at Jean's events. Anytime we do what she calls show and share, so people bring things that they've either finished or in the progress working on, and I had her laying on the table. And with the way the light was bouncing from up the ceiling, one of the people who's actually stitching Sarah, she looked at her and she said, that SWA 103 just like glows.
Mm-hmm.
She said it's almost like it has a slightly metallic, shiny quality to it, just because of the way the light was refracting off of it, which is a feature of SWA 100 and SWA Surfine because of the twist in them.
Right.
They end up being a lot shinier because of that.
So, I hope that when you start stitching your Sarah and you see those colours coming together, the beautiful border and this motif, that it will make your heart flutter the way it's made out.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have my first few stitches in. I have managed to do this little part and this little part of the border because again, I started it with the rest of you that have your supplies, and then I've been here all weekend, so I don't have much done yet.
And the rest of the supplies are coming.
Yes, we promise.
Be patient.
Promise.
So
promise.
part of what I wanted to do was, do you want to drape that kind of over this? So
I will.
the model is stitched on 46 count vintage maple sugar. Yeah, you can move it
Yeah,
closer.
move it towards.
And the color has changed slightly. So the original, the dye lot that Leona stitched it on has a little bit more,
a
little pinker undertone to it. The
Yeah.
current dye lot has a little bit more of a sort of slightly pinky purpley cast to it.
Mhm.
That's just a function of what happens with hand-dyed fabrics over time. Yeah, we'll take a close-up picture of it and post it just so you can kind of see the difference.
Yeah.
But it's, and the color of the current version of maple sugar, I think works just as well. if
Oh,
not
it's
better
gorgeous. Yes.
Than, it's like all things, stuff mutates over time.
And I think, when you are hand dyeing linen, there's so many outside factors that can affect the colour, even to the time of year and the temperature.
Right.
Water, dyes, temperature, salinity.
So a piece of linen.
I know some hand dyers who, I know one hand dyer who bought a company from another hand dyer who retired. And she moved to a different part of the country and she had to redo the formulas because the water was different.
Yeah.
And it was different just enough with the chemical, with what the mineral content was, that she ended up having to redo, not all of them, but she had to test them all and redo a few of them to kind of get them.
And I suppose really you could equate it to having your own hair dyed.
Right.
Oh,
Yes,
true.
You could go to the hairdresser and have your hair dyed 1 month and you go back the next and it's not quite the same, even though they've used the same formula.
Right.
Yeah. But I also think that that's a feature, not a bug.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
treat this as so there's a number of people that here at the Bristol event this weekend who are new stitchers, relatively new stitchers. And it's like, treat it as your own. It's like if you don't like the fabric, if you don't like that particular color for a motif, if you're stitching a reproduction, in the case of being a model stitcher so that it's going to get published, that's one thing. But if this is for your personal collection, then, change the verse if you don't like that verse. Leave it out if you don't like that verse.
Yes.
Change a color. I know a few people have changed colors of some of the birds.
Yep.
It's like, make it your own, because that's what the girls would have done. They would have done it with what they had handy.
Yep.
They would have done it with what they liked, the colors that they liked, within some degree, depending on where the pattern was coming from.
I have a group on Facebook it's a private group, it's for a special event, and I gave all the people attending the event a black and white chart with one symbol. So it's like a complete one colour sampler, but they have to choose their own colours, not
love
just for the
that.
whole sampler, but to bring out the different motifs. And it's just been amazing seeing all the different versions. Some people have elected to stitch with one colour, some with two, and some with a rainbow of colours. And this is what the children, when they were stitching their samplers, it's a process that they went through. But everybody who I've talked to that have done it said they feel that they've grown as a needleworker.
Oh,
That's
wonderful. Which is what your goal was, which is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, you want
that's
people to feel,
fantastic.
you want people to feel comfortable that they can make those choices for
Absolutely.
themselves.
Yes.
And you're following in the footsteps of how those girls stitch their samplers.
Yes.
Right. Well, like the conversation or the talk that Claudia was giving about how the first sampler for Bristol was always red, but if they were able to get to the point where they could do a second one, the second one got to be their choice of colors.
Mhm.
And so they picked things that maybe to us would not necessarily be pleasing to the eye, but it made them happy.
Right.
And Elizabeth Coulter,
Yeah, so we have some news.
but with regards to the same motif,
Yes.
different colours.
Yeah, so last night I purchased, we mentioned this in a previous
Yes.
one of our lives,
Uh-huh.
that there was a sampler very similar to Sarah that had come up for auction, and I'd been debating it for a while. So I actually was negotiating the last couple of days with
She
the
had
seller.
a few glasses of wine.
And so I bought Elizabeth last night, and so Nicola's already done research, and it turns out the sampler is about 85-90% the same.
Yeah.
There are motifs that are different, but they lived in the same town,
No,
Oh,
village.
in the same
The
village,
same
not
village.
town. Lived in
And they were, there's 2 years
Years
between
apart.
them, but they were in school at the same time.
That is so exciting.
So
that they both
when
survived.
that sampler gets to the States, then we're gonna do some more research about and talk about the difference in motifs and stuff, because I think it's nice when you find something that's related, because then it gives you more information about the school or the teacher or the girls or all that. It's another piece in a puzzle.
And when we were, like, obviously we were only looking at the photograph of Elizabeth Coulter, but it appears that the borders are identical and the bird bath motif is identical.
Yeah.
And then they have some slight variations with the others. So I think that goes to show that the teacher's focus was the border, which
Right.
would have been arithmetic and counting,
Right.
and then the central motif, and then the girls had some flexibility about
Yeah.
what else that they put in there.
Well, and I
Love
would
that.
think that the middle part with the birds would have been in part kind of more art appreciation in a way.
Yeah,
How do you have a pleasing design?
yeah,
The fact that it's not just the birds in the bird bath, that you've got all the tendrils
that's right.
of the vines.
With Elizabeth Coulter's song, there are some differences in the colours. Now, some of that could be the way the colours have faded over time,
Mhm.
because they would have been in different conditions. You can see the birds started out the same colours, I think, from that song.
Yeah, it does look like that's
Yeah.
the case, so.
But when we're next together, hopefully we can talk more
Yes.
about that and compare it and see. But
So we're gonna be rendezvousing again at summer
School in
school,
August.
and I will bring Elizabeth with me, after I get her. I would assume I'll get her in the next couple of weeks.
which
She's coming
country
from-
is she going to?
She's coming from the UK.
I could have brought her in August.
That's okay. I want her now. I actually contemplated that, and I went, nah, I think I'm
We get a little antsy
We
about
do.
getting those babies.
Well, I've never bought a sampler before, so this is a first purchase for me.
Well, again,
It's just-
it's a 25th anniversary
Yeah.
present.
Well, and for me, it was, I really liked that it was related to this.
Right.
That it
Absolutely.
brought some more information into the pipeline about
Absolutely.
Sarah as well as Elizabeth.
Absolutely.
Because I think the more we know about the girls who did these things, the more they get to live on in our memories,
Yeah.
as opposed to, in many cases, they ended up being a headstone somewhere and
That's
nobody really knew about
If
their
any
lives.
members of the group have any connection with Yorkshire or have visited Holbeck, or, you know, it would be really nice if maybe you could share something about the area
Oh,
Because
yeah.
Yes.
the villages, the areas, the customs, these all bring these little girls to life.
Is Holbeck still a village?
It might be a town now. But
Okay, might have grown enough to be
Yeah,
a
it
town.
would have
We should look
but
and
with the
see.
Industrial Revolution, it would have expanded. You know, there were mills there.
Oh,
Right.
true, yeah.
You know, it was all about the mills in that area. So,
That's exciting.
Yeah, I think it's lovely. So, so the DMC colors are actually pretty close to, so trying to match between brands of threads is always interesting because there are never exact matches between them. But I like the way that these work with it because I think it's really, really brings out the colors of the birds and the flowers.
we spend such a long time matching colours. Honestly, we really do. We try our absolute best.
Well, it was really interesting last night, a sampler that I showed at Show and Share last night. Another stitcher had done the same sampler and had it there last night. I stitched mine in Swasserfine and Tudor because it didn't all convert really well to just Swasserfine. And she stitched hers all in 103. And which is how you had charted it, because it was a hands across the sea pattern. And she goes, mine is so much more vibrant than yours. And I said, yes, because mine was not a direct conversion, but it is a conversion, getting it as close as could be.
But also, when you stitch with SWA 103 on 56 count,
Yes,
it
It raises
stands
it more.
out. When you stitch it with Safine, it sinks into the
Yes.
body. So 103 is going to have more impact, whether it's mellow colours or vibrant colours. It's always going to be more there.
thank you for bringing that up, 'cause I had forgotten that.
Yeah,
That
it's
is- yes,
it's kind of raised a bit more
It
because of
is.
the roundness of the thread.
And at the end, for me,
Uh-huh.
cross stitch is surface work. So I want my fabric as the background. I want my stitching as the foreground.
yes.
But you like your
I like that
stitches
softer.
softer,
Yes.
and that's how you play with the toys that are available.
Well, and it's also too how you can actually play with contrast in a design. So
Yep.
for example, if you wanted to do a motif where it was not quite as stand-outish, so to speak, on say 56, and you were using SWA 103, if you did that same motif in Swasserfine, it would recede just slightly and give a slightly different look to it. So, it's like you can use the weight of the thread to give some
Yes.
color and texture as
That's
well
right.
in a different way than having to change it.
In some
entirely.
of the old samplers that are stitched in wool or cotton, occasionally you see little touches of silk thread, maybe in a window pane, where the girls couldn't afford to stitch the whole sampler in silk.
Right.
But the teacher allowed them to have a little bit of silk, maybe to learn how to stitch
Oh,
with
yeah.
it, but also to emphasise glass in a window.
Right, because it would have a little more shine.
Shine. Yes, you see the different plays
Yeah.
between the two textures.
Well, and I've also suggested to people that if they're wanting to make the move to silk and they're primarily stitchers with DMC, that if they don't feel comfortable making the move for all of it, find a color or two that you want to highlight a bit more and use that.
Yeah.
Because then you get the chance to use the thread, see what it feels like, do you really like it? And you also then can use it as a way to highlight something, which is kind of.
And there are many needleworkers that have tried silk but have gone back to DMC.
Yeah.
If you're a DMC stitcher, there's nothing wrong with
No,
that
no,
whatsoever.
Well, the important part is we're stitching.
Yes.
It doesn't really, I mean, even
Absolutely.
if you wanted to stitch it with, something out of your stash and the colors weren't the same, if it makes you happy, that's the important part.
That's absolutely
I
right.
really dislike how there's pressure on people. There's pressure on people to stitch higher and higher accounts, pressure to go to a million for made. That's not what needlework should be.
No,
Needlework
I
is
agree.
about using what you want to use, what you enjoy using, and no pressure.
Although it is
And-
nice if I want people to know they have the freedom to try that
Oh,
and then
absolutely.
decide they don't like it.
Exactly.
So if you're trying
Exactly.
a count of fabric that you've not used before, don't start with a really large piece. Start with just get a small piece from a friend, from a shop, whatever, try a motif out of a sample like Sarah,
Yes.
and then decide, yeah, I really like that, I think I'd like to do a bigger piece, rather than feeling like, well, you know, all of my friends are stitching on this thing, so I should too. It's like, maybe you may love it, you may hate it. So I always like to tell people, it's like, spend a small amount of money to decide if you like it.
Yeah.
And then if you really do, then go
Yes.
for it. But if you don't, then you don't feel like you've spent money on something that you're not gonna get any use out of.
I love that.
Linda and I, when we come to events like this and somebody asks us about 56, I was saying, would you like to put some stitches in?
Yeah.
And I invite them to put some stitches in on my work. And the other thing is that when you are going up a count, it's the first few stitches are going to be the hardest. Once you've got 2 or 3 stitches in, those holes become bigger and bigger and bigger. Your eyes adjust and you have your bearings. That's why when I stitch on a plane on 56 count, I would always put some stitches in before I get on the plane.
Yes.
In better light, and I'm not, got that vibration. And then when I come to stitch, I have a reference point to start.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and the way we see the holes in the fabric, the separation between the weave is the light dark contrast in our
Right.
eyes. So as you get older, that's the thing that goes, not just your focus, not just whether you focus here or you focus out there, but also the light dark contrasts, which is why I always tell people, it's like, if you can't really quite see what you're stitching on, take it outside. If you can see it in natural light, then lighting is your problem. If you still can't quite see it, you might still need magnification, but I think we tend to, as stitchers, leap to magnification when light's usually more of the problem. I found when Jean made me start stitching on 56 count, and she says she didn't make me, but I swear she did.
Oh, she did.
She did.
But in a
In a lovely
way.
way. It's like, oh, you haven't stitched on 56? And then I feel like, well, I guess I have to try, don't I? So it took me probably 3 or 4 evenings sitting with my really good light, just to kind of train my eyes and my brain. Because
Yes.
I need to make that connection to be able to see the light dark contrast to tell where the holes were. And there'll be an aha moment where it just sort of clicks and you realize, oh, I'm not having to think about it anymore. I can
Right.
just do it.
This is why stitching on, say, black fabric is
It's
hard,
so hard.
because you haven't got the light dark
Right.
contrast.
Right.
And I do think that is one of the reasons why most people tend to gravitate towards the medium tones rather than the super dark colors.
Yeah.
If you are stitching on a really dark color, you put like a white, I use an old pillowcase. Put a white pillowcase on your lap. It will help reflect the light up under,
Yeah.
which helps
Yes.
with you'll be able to see the holes. Because what we're seeking is the holes. And so that can help a lot. So if you are working on whether it's Sarah or another piece and feeling like I'm not quite getting where the needle needs to go, do it for a little longer till your brain makes the connection, but also try it in sunlight to see if maybe
Yeah.
that's part of it.
And again, maybe get some magnification, higher magnification, just for those first few stitches.
Yeah.
And then you probably find you don't need that magnification.
Yeah, that is true, because sometimes on 56, I need it for like about 10 minutes. And then I take my
Yeah.
my little clip-on things off, go get something in the kitchen, come back, I don't put them back on,
No.
and suddenly I'm seeing it again. It's almost like you have to retrain
That's
yourself.
right. This weekend, I've just released something here at the attic, and one element of the project is on a very dark red, the Weeks Aztec red.
I
And it's
love
Oh,
that
that's a
red.
lovely color.
But I have to say to you that when I first went to stitch on that, and I was using cream thread, I did pull my big magnifier out just to get my bearings, and then I pushed it back away and I just stitched there with my readers.
Right.
But that was because it was a very dark
It
red.
is very dark red.
Well, and the other thing too for people who have issues with tension is if you put a piece away for a while, do a few stitches in the margin
Absolutely.
to get your
Yes.
get used, particularly if you stitch on a lot of different counts of fabrics. to kind of get back into the rhythm of what that looks like. I have a beading piece because I do a lot of hobbies in my life. I have a beading piece that I had put away for probably 4 or 5 years. And I went, and it's a bead weaving thing, and I went back to it, and I ended up having to take out the first 2 rows when I restarted it because my tension was so much tighter because I hadn't gone and done a little practice piece.
When I teach at a workshop, and particularly when I'm teaching like satin stitches, I always say to people, when you sit down, you have to have some warm-up exercises. If you sat down to play the piano, you would do some scales. When you sit down to do your needlework, do some practice stitches in the margin,
Yes.
just to calm
I
down,
like that.
find your beat. Like if you're doing stem stitch,
Mm-hmm.
satin stitches, queen stitches, 4-sided stitches where tension plays a big part,
Yes.
you need to do some warm-up exercises.
I like that, needlework warm-up exercise.
No, but it's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
no, but I like that
absolutely-
as a term.
people who've come to my classes when I've been teaching, samples
Yes.
with specialty stitches, it is something that I speak about. And also, even if you're doing cross stitch, if you've come home from a stressful day at work and you sit down with your needlework,
Like this.
your stitches are going to be tight because
Yeah.
that's how you are.
Yeah.
You need just to chill
Chill a
down.
bit.
And the way you do that, stitch some cross stitches in the margin, and then you get that lovely feeling of euphoria that you
Yeah.
can bring, and your tension releases.
Don't just,
Let
don't,
it go in
don't
those
just
shoulders,
jump
too.
in, just
Yeah.
do a
Yeah.
little, I like
Have a
that,
glass of wine
I like
first.
that idea of warm-up exercise.
Away from your fabric.
Away from
Yeah,
your
away
fabric. We heard a wonderful story yesterday about chicken noodle soup. There's a new overnight thing.
Chicken noodle soup.
That was a good story.
Oh, my
That was
heart
a great
went out
story.
to her.
Yeah. Well, let's talk really quick before we finish up
Oh, about the
about
corrections.
the corrections, because I know that we got another question today. So the question was, if by making the corrections on the first page, and you will get these corrections when you get your pattern, so you don't
They're
have to take
actually-
notes.
They're actually they're in the files section, and look under the files tab in our Facebook group.
Thank you. Okay, so the corrections are there. They're not big, mind-boggling corrections. So, but there is one area where you're gonna drop your stitching down 1 thread. You're gonna come down a couple motifs and raise that stitching up 1 thread.
No, you're not raising anything up.
Oh, it's just, well,
No,
we're
it's just
removing
you're
a
leaving out-
stitch.
you're
That's
leaving
right,
out
we're
row.
leaving out a
Yeah.
stitch.
Yeah, you're leaving out-
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, that is the correct clarification. So we're dropping 1 stitch, dropping down 1 stitch at the top, but we're removing 1 stitch a couple motifs down. And that compensates for that change. So when you get, let me turn this around for a minute so I can look at it
Last but 1 page. Oh, no, it's not.
right here.
No.
No?
That's the
Oh, that's the wrong one. There, okay. So when you get to the bottom of that row, whoops, there we go. When you get to the bottom of the row, it's not going to adjust where the border lands.
Because that is correct.
It's
So-
a section in the middle that
It's
was.
just
This-
that little top section.
Yep, so how this lands is correct. It is how Sarah stitched it. So it's how it was charted, so that is all correct. So by making those couple of little corrections, you're not going to affect that bottom corner
And
at
if
all.
you've already stitched past that motif, it sort of
You're
self-corrects
okay.
farther down.
And I think as well, the fact of, we were just talking about this, we believe that this corner is where Sarah met up her corners and she found
Right.
her maths were off by 1.
Yeah.
And it'd be really interesting
Oh, to
when
see whether or not
Elizabeth
Elizabeth
Yeah.
was that way as
how
well.
she did her corners.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, because you see, the way they came off the border, you see, it's not this flower that comes off this end.
Oh,
It's
right.
the other flower, so of course that throws everything around
Little
a little
cattywampus
bit.
there,
Yeah.
just
So
tiny bit.
this one she finished on the peach one, and this one's on the green one. This one's on the green one. This one's on the peach one.
Right.
And she had to work out her maths, and she just got it slightly wrong. So it'd be interesting to see what Elizabeth did.
True. Excellent.
So just go to the file tab,
Yeah, it
Communication
says that
patterns,
it
the
says
corrections
it's the
are right
corrections.
there. Just keep in mind that it is on that very first page where you have some of those corrections, and they're not going to affect how it ends.
Yeah, there's a couple of other minor ones. There was
Yeah.
an extra,
Stray blue
there was a
stitch.
stray blue stitch and an extra
extra stitch in the
character. Yeah.
Third letter.
They're
third
all,
unit.
they're all really extremely minor.
So
And I think I think we're done for today then.
Yes, we've got class.
Yep,
to
we've
go
got
to.
We have
good
class
class.
to go to.
We
So
don't
for
do
those
it.
of you who are also,
no walk of shame.
for those of you who are also doing Hannah Campbell, we're gonna be doing a live at Jean's shop at 4 p.m. Pacific time this afternoon
Yes.
with the three of us,
Yes.
with Jean, with Janine Cheney from Acorns and Threads, and remotely with Janice from Traditional Stitches in Calgary, and Carrie Lynn from Australia will also be joining us.
A
for
stitch
video.
in time.
So we're gonna have we're calling it Hanging with Hannah.
Yes.
So if you're doing Hannah or just interested, come join us come join us at 4 Pacific time this afternoon.
And you'll get to see a little bit of the attic as well.
True.
And if you're not part of the group, go ahead and ask to join. Ask,
and Cheri and I
answer the
will
one
do it.
question. You have to answer the one question. It's just one quick question, and that's only so I know you're not a robot and that you're not going to start spamming all of my beautiful ladies and gentlemen that are on this site. So answer the one question, and we will get you on so that you can join us at 4.
Yep.
All right.
So thank you guys very
Thanks.
much.
Okay.
You two can
Nice
chat
to
for a
bye.
moment while I go turn the video off. Thanks, everybody.
Oh,
She
I
is
can't
just-
stop looking at her.
I know.
She's so beautiful.
The bird bath just took my breath away. Well, the whole thing.